Code Orange underneath. Anyway, okay. Alright. The technically fourth studio album, third as Code Orange, if we're not counting the first record under their name when they were originally Code Orange Kids. Y'all kind of know some of this. I did review. I don't know if I'll leave a link in the description at this point. We'll see what happens. But I get lazy sometimes, I'll admit. But this one, I have to cram. Anyway. All this. These 12 tracks, I believe. This leads off supposedly off of Forever. And this one more so just dives more deeper than before. In fact, reflecting on deeper than before, it's, I guess, supposed to be kind of in a modern American Psycho, but just, I guess, from what it seems. But, and with some few references here and there, I mean, swallowing the rabbit whole, as in I am, as opposed to the going down the rabbit hole, but it's also kind of oxymoronically kind of that, given what Deeper Than Before is, as the theme basically has stated of taking a good look at you, and just the more, there is a sense of it kind of having us almost, given the album cover and everything else, a very body horror, it's somewhat, or at least the imagery has a body horror centricism to it, but it's usually it's really more of a psychological horror that seems to also have some essences of that, it seems. Or at least that's what it comes off as. And the riffing, this album is, comparatively speaking, this is the first album where they no longer have Kurt Ballou producing for them, yada yada. And from what I've gathered through his recent interview, that Jamie Morgan, the guitarist vocalist, technically frontman, well, I guess he was drummer, I think. Let me double check here. He might still be drummer. Yeah, he's still the drummer, vocalist, and primary songwriter of this band, or lyricist, so to speak, and a very smart individual himself. They said they used a lot of DAWs and definitely a lot of DIs on the use of direct inputs, and just a lot of modern ideas of production that I guess would be comparable within hip-hop, but the way they're doing this, there seem to like, or at least depending on certain forms of hip-hop, more in the underground, probably more closer to something. They mentioned like referencing JPEG Mafia, or maybe, and just given some of the glitchy moments, I want to say, I'm thinking of, why am I forgetting the band name? That makes me sad. The band I'm thinking of, is more so, the group I'm thinking of. Why am I forgetting them? That I shouldn't, oh crap. Why am I forgetting? They even worked with Chino Moreno of Deftones. Death Grips, there we go. Sorry for that, that took a while. But anyways, and it's just such a huge, This album just is one of the few, it's definitely the fact that they are further evolving themselves. They're still finding a way to be heavier, but still kind of trying to find a way to be that heavy, that's dense, both heavy, just as dense, just as visceral, and very violent in its approach, as they have always been. Just this time, there's a little bit more chances of trying to be catchier, and then do all these things and make it all work and flow well. Even adding certain things more so in the industrial and more glitchy elements of this band, or like taking more glitch hoppy, and sort of a very conscious look of things, about more so, as Morgan had put it, it's more about the way the rest of the world is, and this so ever connected, so overly connected, yet so connected more so through the internet. It's so underly connected towards ourselves as people, and seeing the somewhat psychological repercussions of it, or at least that's what it seems to be. or at least furthering more so compared to previous albums in Forever or I Am King. This one going even deeper into the point of even going as far as going up against your the things of your corporations and all these things that are just feeding yourselves and just trying to figure out who we are really psychologically, or are we just products of the entities of the corporations who've created these things, of the social medias and just other forms of those types of products. Are we just as much a product as they are? And that kind of thing. It's even deeper than before. The whole has swallowed us. The prey are in control. I've seen the other side. It's darker than it was. It stretches what I love until it's far apart. In the minutia and the nuance, there's a cloud heavy above, watching it inch closer. The blackest beam to take me up. I can see it, couldn't touch it, even from the highest run. In this cell we call a full life. Is it here I'm finally stuck? With the soldiers and all the suffering, all good men, but the smothering of what's undone runs like blood. And this moment has is where they really show off some glitchy, almost to the point of kind of coming off like this weird sort of industrial djenty thing, though not intending to be djent. I don't know, at least the way it comes off odd-timed is what I mean to say in terms of that, when they do the runs like Bloodline. And then a synesthesia filled a needle pokes through the skin. How can I be so certain that this was more than the sum of our urges? Down we go. It feels so good to analyze and correct, but you never really know until the foot is on your neck. Where will I be when you age and I can't connect with these little rat fuck kids and the pigs, the sign the checks, when buzzing noise rots your ears, the breath clog your chest? Or better yet, what are you gonna do when it comes your turn to pay time's debt? Like birds of prey spitting out the bone, like watching my dreams come and go, you're staring into your new god's soul. I'm swallowing the rabbit whole. And then, of course, even in moments like in Fear, there are moments where they further go into other types of territories, the more Reba-oriented stuff than the Jamie's stuff. Even though there is a song, there are other songs where you do get to hear Jamie do some clean stuff, or at least kind of do a spoken word thing, similar to what he had done in certain songs around the last record, which I'm thinking is, I'm guessing around the point of, I think it's more Ugly. It's more on the track Ugly from the last record where he does a similar kind of thing. But it's not up until like in Fear, and that's where things do get a little messed up. But that one going as far as like kind of like a Man in the Box kind of a thing. Lyrically, it's very reminiscent to something that Downs and Chains did with Man in the Box, but even more demented in the sense of, so if you do anything at all, saunter into the bedroom, suck down into the floor. What will you have done, live and breathe long after you're gone? I'd do anything at all just to cut the legs off. A man swallows his son, the son meets his boogeyman. You thought it was done, you've got it all wrong. In fear of a life in the box, in fear of no end. Before we even, and I mean, look at even the you and you alone thing, just trying to figure out, just continues on. And even to the point where they try to end in fear, and it's this weird, and they especially with this one, they definitely focus a lot of the programming on this is also they credit this new guy Shade that they added into the band, and then they kind of give him credit to this is the man lineup, by the way, and Shade is right here, I believe. We still have some of the members that we've still had in the past lineup, I believe, which I believe should be Joe Goldman on bass, Dominic Landon. I think this is Dominic, or unless he's the bassist. I'm trying to remember, because I do know that Reba Morgan, the Shade. I think that's supposed to be either it's Goldman or it's Landon. Landolina. I'm sorry if I'm doing a butchering here of your pronunciations, my friends, but or acquaintances, I guess, since we never really met. But anyways, I mean, it's credited by the band themselves, but for the most part, the lyrics, well, at least in terms of the music, the lyricism being more so Jamie Morgan. It seems Shade also kind of played a part in co-producing with this album. It's well, it's more Nick Rizolis and band members Jamie Morgan and then Shade, and Will Yip does play who had been co-producer with Kurt Ballou on the last album, does come back here, giving some sense of someone that's had experience and knows what to do with what the band is going for. Or at least it was a good way to where Kurt Ballou could do what he could to pass the torch, I guess, along to someone to give them the reins they needed to. Because apparently Kurt Ballou didn't like exactly some of the more industrial ideas that they were going for and was kind of like, what the fuck are you doing? So, yeah, that didn't... it kind of makes sense why he wound up kind of busy with having mixed Intronauts record, I guess. So, I mean, that might be part of it, too. But they did get someone in Rick Zulnes, I think, who has basically, in recent memory, basically responsible for bringing back Alice in Chains, or at least this current era that we've had for at least a couple albums. I think. Yeah, just made one for the better, one for the worse in that regard. And then, like, the two best albums we've had in years from Deftones in the form of both Diamond Eyes and Kono Yoken. You definitely hear a little bit of that. In terms of the lead work on this record in places, or at least certain moments, especially when you get to tracks like... And for the most part, and it gets to certain tracks like Who I Am is where things get more interesting in the sense... Cold Metal Place is definitely where things start to get a little more brutal, more visceral and brutal as well. Who I Am does do that sort of psychological thing, as I had alluded to earlier. And the sound choices are very... I think this one it starts off very... Some of the work that they had done, they worked with basically the Chris Vrenna, who has additional programming, who has done work with both... Who has basically worked with Nine Inch Nails for the past few years. And I do mean both Atticus Ross, both not just Trent Reznor, but also Atticus Ross. And whether it had been for Nine Inch Nails, well, he was actually considered a drummer, and he did some programming stuff for them as well. And they decided to, and he came on board and helped with some of the programming ideas. And in fact, I don't know how long he's been involved with them to knowing some of those types of programs, but that's what happened, and it helped with Shade out with that programming. And it definitely played a lot in the layers of what is going on here. In fact, some of those more industrial and those weird little, like, in and out sort of glitches. And then, most likely, though, there's some interesting industrial moments in Who I Am that start off very much, you could hear the Nine Inch Nails influence. Like that Pretty Hate Machine Nine Inch Nails influence going on in this band. And this is, I think, one of the first songs with Reba Myers doing the vocals. And it goes from that to something very much a more metallic, meaty version of like Garbage's I Think I'm Paranoid. In terms of like, at least in terms of the sound of what they're going for on this track. And the feel of it, at least. Minus some of maybe the keyboards or whatever. But, especially given Reba's vocals do have a sort of Shirley Manson kind of vibe to them. Meets some essences of other female Brented grunge acts, whether it having to include the likes of Courtney Love or even, dare I say, whoever the chick is in L7. Though I think those are... Though I think she'll accept just Shirley Manson. She'll probably get mad at that. I don't blame her. Anyways. Well, I could just tell you that you're the only other Reba that's not McEntire that needs to matter in the music industry. Can we say that? Can we say that officially now? Please? Thank you. Now, and then, of course, which, Swallowing the Rabbit Hole was the first single on that record, and the video had both that and the Deeper Than Before opening piece, which definitely felt like some kind of thing. And they really kind of lay into that kind of a score thing the easy way. Erasure Scan's pretty... The Easy Way is definitely a much easier song. I think that's one of the... That was definitely one of the more Marilyn Manson-y type ones, I think. Meets very Alice in Chains moments. There's definitely some moments where you do kind of hear a little Deftones. Little bit, but not by much. But you also hear their other influences, whether it be something of the more Ministry... Like the earlier stuff, that Ministry stuff comes off a lot more, but this one, there's your Fear Factory, which more closer in Fear Factory, especially given the drumming is way more organic in feel, I think, than Processed. Despite, relying on clearly digital media, there is still a feel of true human organicism, despite the more industrial elements that come into here. I feel as though from the way he was talking and what I've just said, there's a slight similarity to another album that had come out in March around this time that had dealt with apparently a similar theme. And that album was Devin Townsend's Empath. And that album wound up, I think I did have it pretty high on my list last year, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I'm not comparing it to that album necessarily. I mean, these are two different things. I mean, that's some progressive metal. This is some heavy hardcore turned industrial nu metal core of some sort. But like nu metal in the Slipknot and Deftones kind of way. Like the good bands that have still been around consistently and have aged gracefully, even to the point of kind of trying to actually transcend said genre. Not to mention the band has cited death metal and sludge metal, though this time I think they've went a little more grunge alternative metal in places, but not in a bad way. Definitely if you're citing bands like Alice in Chains, for the most part. Not nearly to the extent of, say, like what I just said about Intronaut and their vocal thing. No. I mean like terms of the sound of the band itself and the instrumentation. For the most part, you still get the whole feeling of what Converge brings in terms of their hardcore turned metalcore type thing. They just go about a different way, and they do a much better job than most of these other bands. They still are the Keens. They've proven themselves already since I Am Keen. They've made it pretty clear by Forever, to the point where even Bray Wyatt has asked them to do, and they've had an EP where they co-worked with. Where they basically collaborated with Corey Taylor. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if in some messed up way, through the means of this band, they kind of sort of influenced what led to, honestly, another top album of mine, and Slipknot's We Are Not Your Kind. Though I will admit, I wish the first track that we were teased, that Halloween, prior to the year that it came out in 2000, I believe, 18, of that Halloween, All Out Life, which I wish was on the album and not as a bonus track in fucking Japan. I'm just saying, I'm still bitter about that, not reaching out to say something. And I can get that record now at this one store. I had to get this through a CD warehouse, by the way. And I need to collect all my Dillinger, since, they're never going to be around again. May as well just enjoy what I can of them now. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. As far as this band is concerned, and even leading up to the Underneath, and I don't think it loops itself around as much. It kind of can, but not nearly to the extent, and it's sort of abrupt, but not nearly to the extent, and which is kind of almost a thing for them to leave it seemingly open-ended, their album's interpretation to be open-ended. And I think that's what they tried to have been doing since they've kind of done it since their Code Orange Kids days, but it's become more apparent even by the point from having gone through their discography, even from their Code Orange Kids days up to this point. The real question I have at this point is, what can they do now? What can they do now? That's what all that really worries me about this band moving forward, if they are going to be able to move forward. And given the trying times of what we are in terms of humanity, and then of course Back Inside the Glass is pretty brutal. Ottoman Carbine's a pretty good one. I think that one was one where I think the guitars really come in. The lead's work is very reminiscent of of what Cantrell tries to bring to the table a little bit, you know. I do believe it was in The Easy Way, I think, is the one that had the vocals done by done even more so by Following Sulfur Surrounding, which was another good one for Reba. The Easy Way kind of has Reba, but I think this one is more Jamie on the vocals, I think. If I can clean, I think. They mentioned they have the weird girl scream vocals, by the way, that's like freaks you out, and it adds the little Matrix style, like digital, like glitchy fuckery of like, you know, like, you know, that's that thing to it as well. The Christopher Nolan thing that ever since Inception, they do some of those things. They managed to work it all together, and even with their other influences. And to hear that this band had opened for King Diamond and Slayer, opening a set at 1:30 in the afternoon, annihilating it to the point where because they're old at this point, and Slayer, you know, was on retirement tour probably as well when that was going on. So yeah, they weren't gonna at that, or at least part of that one retirement tour, it seemed, from what I heard from this one reviewer, Metal Meltdown, check him out. Yeah, they slayed. They didn't just slay, they dominated and decimated that crowd. In terms of like sheer raw power and heaviness. And that's something that definitely, this record kind of does that. And it took me about 5 listens to actually kind of adjust to this, almost about as much as I was able to that. And I'm not a horror guy, but this is the horror I recommend. Although I feel bad for Josh McCouga, because now he has one more thing to be scared of aside from Zoobly Zoo. I've probably mentioned this the last one, but I'm going to do it again anyway. And being that these guys are also from Pittsburgh. Which, by the way, Eating History. I thought it was supposed to be this past Wednesday, but it turns out it's actually coming out next Tuesday or Wednesday or so. Speaking of Tuesday, I've been meaning to watch that freaking Hot Ones game. Anyways, but game show or something that's on True TV. But I mean, I'm not helping myself given what I've just talked about. But you know, something we're gonna have to do since we're gonna probably have to quarantine ourselves to pass the time. More on that in another video that I'm gonna have to put out. I got 3 of them, and I gotta cram them in this one day because it's unfortunately my last review video for a while. I'll do a video more on that later, but I'm going to try to be a little more entertaining about that too. So, but overall, as far as Code Orange Underneath is concerned, another album of the year contender for sure. Probably pushes above Intronaut's new album for me. It's definitely in terms of both being somehow extreme without having to, with purpose and not for just being the sake of being extreme, while also somehow being surprisingly accessible. Probably not in a way. This is a stretch, probably not even close to that, but not in a way since Pantera. Even though the band has not even cited Pantera as an influence so much as Sepultura, but which have amongst the same groove metal scene. But anyways, yeah, that's it, guys. What did you? And it's up there. I don't know if it'll knock out the new Spanish Love Songs album, but but it's damn good. It's gonna be up there. It's gonna make top 3 right now, since it's only been 3 albums technically. But anyways, what did you guys think? Leave a comment below, let me know. Rock the like button with thrusting if you must. Rockin' Movies with Tyler. I'm Tyler. Keep it real, keep it rockin'. And once this quarantine is done and all these other videos I put out today, I will hopefully see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Take care, y'all. Got it all figured. I'm gonna leave you with this, actually. What was the final line? Underneath the wave you've been waiting for, there's a truth. You got it all figured out until you're drowning in it.